Let's begin our exploration of contemporary anti-Semitism by examining the first major realm from which it emanates, the far right. As mentioned, in the immediate post-war years, far-right parties were marginalized and their ideologies, including racial anti-Semitism, were discredited due to the horrific actions taken by the Nazis and their collaborators during the war, particularly during the Holocaust. These ideas remained in the fringes of society, having close to no effect on the mainstream political sphere, though they did continue to develop. Major issues that arose in the second half of the 20th century, especially from the 1970s onwards, such as globalism, worldwide immigration, economic instability, served to popularize these previously marginal voices, allowing them to gain a more central political position. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, far-right political parties and movements enjoyed victories in elections across Europe. Major political gains were made throughout the 2010s. Encouraged by a general dissatisfaction following worldwide recessions, by rising unemployment, by separatist leanings surging in Europe, and by a continuing immigration and refugee crisis, nationalism and populism are becoming ascendant political forces to be reckoned with, following a rising sense of disappointment in democracy and the welfare state. Far-right movements and related political parties are gaining ground in many European states, as well as the United States. Voices from the margins of the political landscape are moving to its center, transforming the fringe voices to persuasive political actors who set the agenda and frame media debates. We have seen how in the past, groups and movements active in this sphere advocate xenophobia, racism, and anti-Semitism. What characterizes the far right today? As we will now hear, some general commonalities can be found among the various groups defined as belonging to the far right, though there are, of course, differences, especially when describing the more extreme, blatantly anti-democratic parties in relation to the so-called populist ones.
It's very difficult to generalize about the far right, but there are some characteristic dimensions which you can attribute to all of these parties, in spite of the very different traditions and contexts. It's important to state that some of these far-right parties are what we call one-issue parties. So, for example, they are only directed against Islam or Muslims. This is specifically the Dutch party of Geert Wilders, and then there are other far-right parties such as the Austrian Freedom Party or the Hungarian Jobbik and Fidesz, or the German AfD, which have big traditions and roots in fascism and National Socialism and cover a huge range of different aims and objectives. And then I would also like to make a distinction between extreme right and right-wing populist, although the boundaries are blurred. But extreme right parties endorse violence, going towards fascism. I would certainly say that the Golden Dawn in Greece or the Jobbik in Hungary are extreme right neo-Nazi parties. They have paramilitary troops. They run through villages of Roma in Hungary, for example. They beat people up. They've killed people. The same is true for the Golden Dawn movement. Whereas the other right-wing populist parties like the Austrian or German or also Swedish or other parties still stay inside the democratic institutions, even though they try and hollow them out from inside. Anti-Semitism, I believe, is always part and parcel of far-right ideologies, and it's important to emphasize that far-right discourses always means that they have certain ideological content. So it's not just form, it's always also content. Because we have a limited set of linguistic resources, so they have to be sort of filled or merged with certain ideological contents. And one of these contents is always hatred of Jews.